Greetings and welcome to part 2 of the Willow Creek Business Ownership Workshop series. Tonight, we're going to be talking about building your business plan and your marketing strategy. My name is Mike Waller, and I'm going to be your host as a member of the Willow Creek Employment Services team. And this series is sponsored through our organization. Let's get started. Part 1 covered off a lot of information about what it means to be the owner of a business and some ways to give consideration to that. I'm hopeful that you've had the opportunity to review part 1. This is a series that does build one upon the other. So if you've not had the opportunity to read or review part 1, I would encourage you to do so. Tonight, again, we're going to be covering part 2, which is all about building your business plan and your marketing strategy. And then part 3, we're going to be talking about the creation of your marketing plan in a much detailed form. And then lastly, in the fourth part of this series, we'll be talking specifically about what it means to start your business in the state of Illinois, what I like to call the 12-step program. A little bit of a review from what was covered last week, talked about the book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And it's a very interesting book. If you've not had the opportunity to review it, read it, I would encourage you to potentially pick it up at a bookstore or on Amazon, or you can go out to YouTube and plug in the name Simon Sinek or Start With Why, and you'll find some TED Talks out there where he speaks for an hour or so on the whole subject of what it means to really have a purpose for your business and to clearly understand what that vision and intention is for the business, the why the business exists. I also spent time talking you through the concept called ILWE, income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity creation, a set of goals, needs, and expectations that are framed in the context of each of these attributes that will give you purpose as you do your thought process on creating your expectations for what you want the business to do for you in a very holistic way. I also covered off the whole idea of whether or not you're wired to be the owner of a business. Are you an influencer type person? Are you a decision maker? Are you a strategist? Are you a people person? Are you a team player? Are you an industry expert? Those are just a couple of samplings of what it means to say, what's your expertise? What are you good at? What are you gifted with? What are your talents? Think about whether or not you're a leader. If you have a business you want to scale, hey, do you have the leadership skills in order to make that happen? Can you be an evangelist? Are you comfortable talking about your business in a variety of different forums? Are you comfortable with numbers? If you don't have a business that produces profitability for you, then you might find yourself with an expensive hobby. You'll hear me say that a number of times during this whole series. Are you comfortable with the numbers side of your business? Do you have people management skills? If you're going to scale a business, then you're probably going to do it through other people. Do you have people management skills to make that happen? Are you comfortable with hiring and firing people? How financially stable are you? Can you stay the course if times get tough and things don't go exactly as planned? Are you still going to be able to go to the grocery store and put gas in your vehicle and, well, buy tennis shoes for your kids maybe? And then finally, are you a risk taker or are you a risk averse kind of a person? You really have to know how you're wired. Because as a business owner, you're a jack of all trades. You do a little bit of anything and everything in the beginning stages in particular. Everybody would love to have a semi-absentee or an absentee kind of a business. Typically does not happen in the beginning as you are building your business throughout the first 3 to 5 years of the life of your business. As a church community, the Bible is the source of all knowledge and all expertise and all things that are important for us as we do life. This is a quote from the book of Proverbs, one of my favorite books, chapter 12, verse 15. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he that listens to counsel is wise. You will hear me say numerous times throughout this whole series the importance of having advisors that you lean into, whether it's an accountant, a CPA, an attorney, a business coach, a family member who's already a business owner, whoever those individuals might be. You need to have people that you lean into to gain advice from and counsel from as you go through the journey of figuring out whether or not business ownership is the right thing for you. In framing out this whole series, these are some of the things that I consider to be the keys to business success. You got to clearly have a vision, and then you have to have a plan that supports that vision. You have to have a clear understanding of what your value proposition is. What's your marketing strategy and your plan? And then all the other miscellaneous things that kind of fall in behind that. This kind of breaks it out in terms of how we're going to conduct our session tonight. We're going to cover everything up in the yellow section there, all the way from a vision down through a marketing strategy. And we're going to save the plan for next week, because I'm going to do an actual detailed walkthrough of exactly how you can go about building a plan for yourself. Perhaps you recognize that face. The very well decorated general in the United States Army, Secretary of State under the Bush administration. His name is Colin Powell. Had the opportunity to listen to Colin Powell speak at a leadership summit that we held at Willow Creek Church a number of years ago. And he spoke on the whole subject of leadership and a vision. Because as a leader, you have to have a clear sense of vision, a sense of purpose. What's the dream? What are you trying to accomplish? Have a clear understanding of what that vision looks like. And you also have to recognize that as a leader and as a visionary for the business, that you've got to have a clear understanding of what's the problem that we solve, what's the service we provide, what's the need that we fill. And that was something very important to think about as you think about what's the vision that you have for your idea, assuming that you have an idea. If you don't, hey, that is where part one will give you some additional perspective if you haven't already listened to that. Here's a sample of what I would call a vision summary: a personal vision, professional vision. I'll give you the opportunity to read through that for just a couple of minutes, but it's pretty simple. It's just a simple statement of what's the summary of my vision for my business, both personally and professionally. And if you take and capture it a different way, you might look at it in picture form. Maybe these are some of the reasons why you want to do a business, your vision for the business. You want to control your own career destiny. Maybe that's one of them. Maybe you want to consider business ownership as a passive or semi-absentee adjunct to what you do today, or maybe a full-time replacement for a job. Maybe you want to create additional passive income. Maybe you just want to find excitement and energy in something new. Maybe you want to create the resources to be able to fund the desired lifestyle that you choose to have. Maybe you just want to have freedom and flexibility to pursue all your interests without being at the beck and call of someone called an employer. Maybe you want to make a difference in your community. Maybe that's an important part of your vision. Or maybe you just really want to increase your income to create wealth and equity for financial independence. This is just a sampling. The pictures can be your pictures, whatever they are. These are common ones that I hear quite frequently in my coaching business, where I coach people through the journey of exploring business ownership for themselves. Something to think about, the creation of a vision board for yourself. Basic 101 business stuff. I call this the pillars of a business. For some of you, this may be very straightforward and be very familiar to you. For others of you, it may be new territory for you. There are essentially four pillars that support every business that exists today. On the left side, we've got products and services. What do you have to sell? It's got to be something that people want. Maybe you build it in-house. Maybe you source it from somewhere else. Maybe it's a service. Maybe you use contractors to deliver the service. You got to understand clearly what is it that you have to sell. Secondly, what's your strategy for selling it? That's the sales and marketing approach. How do you acquire and how do you retain customers or clients? You do that by having a clear plan for yourself that how you're going to do promotion via advertising, or maybe digital marketing, or some kind of print promotion, whatever those methods might be. It's a strategy that says this is how we're going to get people interested in what we have to sell. The financial side of things, you got to have working capital to make a business go. What's that capitalization going to look like? What is your financial strategy? How are you going to keep track of the books? How are you going to manage your P&L? Everything having to do with the financial numbers side of your business is the third pillar. And then the fourth pillar has to do with the infrastructure, the operational side of the business itself. Are there people that execute tasks, that create services or create products on your behalf? What's the technology that underpins that? Everything today is driven by technology. What about cybersecurity? What about point of sale system? Depends on what the nature of the business is. How do you make connections to vendors and buying products and services, of whatever the nature might be? How do you maintain inventory control? These are all the operational aspects of the business, and they represent the four pillars of what your business is going to be all about. So why do you need a business plan? Well, in its simplest form, the business plan is the story of your business. If you had to tell the story of what your business is all about and get somebody to clearly understand what you're all about, what you do, and how you are going to run your business plan is going to do that. This is a pretty strong statement. Fail to plan, plan to fail. I've seen it over and over and over. People have a great idea. They think, I just want to go start my business because I want to do the business. They don't take time to really plan and strategize to determine whether or not they truly have a business that they're executing based upon a strategy that they have. So let's talk about some of the elements of the business plan. You see essentially 7 lines of boxes there. I'm going to talk about each one of them in a little bit of detail. The business plan really serves 2 purposes. Number one, it helps you to clearly do the homework necessary to determine whether or not you really do have a business. And what I mean by a business is an entity that is going to create profitability. You can be classed as a nonprofit, but you still have to be able to pay all the expenses and potentially be profitable in the business. But the purpose of it is not for the sake of profit. It is for a different purpose. Whereas a business that is built upon selling a product or service is truly a profit-driven business. You need to have a clear sense of strategy. You need to have thought it through. I'm going to cover that in a little bit of detail for you here. Secondly, pardon me, if you are going to need funding for your business, you're going to have to go to a lending institution of some sorts. They're going to ask you right out of the box, what's your business plan? Where is your business plan? Please share it with me. Pardon me. A little bit of tickle in the throat. The executive summary is, as the name implies, it's a summary of what the remainder of the detail in the business plan shows. It's geared towards a banker or a financial institution to be able to give them a 1 or 2 page summary of what the business is all about, why you think it's a good business. The next line down there where we begin to take a look at, pardon me, we take a look at business trends and target market and competition. This is the research stage. This is where you're really trying to figure out what's the reason why this business has merit. I'm going to use a thread of a story of a kind of a business here because I think most people can relate to it. If you think of elder care services, for example, the reason why that is a robust market and a robust type of a business to be in today has to do with a simple demographic. 10,000 people are turning 65 every single day. They're known as the baby boomers. By 2030, there will be upwards of 75 million people that fit that category of over 75 or 65. As a result of that, there's going to be a need for a variety of different kind of care services at different stages of life as they proceed through life. And so what you're really trying to identify, take that and extrapolate that for any other kind of a business. What's the business trend that supports it? If you went to a banker with a plan to, well, say, I want to create a Yellow Pages printing business, that banker is probably going to look at you and go, I think you might want to go to the bank across the street because we don't think that's a very viable business to be in because the trend lines just don't support it. But you have to have a clear understanding, again, of who is your target market. What are the trend lines that would say to you, this is a good business to be in? Then there's the arena of competition, understanding who the competition is, what the competition is. That's extremely important. Competition is a validation of the fact that there is truly a business. And that is the reason why you have to have a clear understanding of who are your competitors, direct competitors, indirect competitors. We'll talk about that in the next part of this series. And then the creation of a marketing plan. That's what we're going to cover off in part 3. We're going to talk in detail about how do you actually create a marketing plan that says line by line, this is exactly how we're going to attack the marketplace. From that, you're able to create sales projections, which are your best estimates of how much volume of product or service that you're going to sell on a very detailed basis. Those sales projections are vitally important because they represent the goals that you're going to have to achieve in order to create and fulfill your business plan from a financial standpoint. And then there's the operations plan. How are you going to organize the business? Are you going to have employees? Who's going to manage the employees? How are they going to be managed? What's going to be your role? All that falls into the category of the operational plan of how you're going to produce product, how you're going to produce service, everything associated with the operational side of the business. And then you've got management and administration, which I kind of reflected in the operational plan also. But how are you going to manage the business? How many employees are you going to have? Over what period of time? When do you expect you'll be adding employees? What will be the foundation, the basis under which you will be making those decisions? Then finally, the rubber hits the road when you get to the financial projections, and you have to put together a pro forma for your business, which is another way of saying a complete financial spreadsheet workbook of your business plan from a financial standpoint. This is what is vitally important to a banker. I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail here. So again, executive summary, business trends, model of your business, competition, risks, your marketing strategy, your marketing plan, your products, your services, how you're going to price, sales projections, operational systems plan, business structure, and then financial plan. That is what goes into a typical business plan. A business plan could be 200 pages long, could be 20 pages long. It's not about the length of it necessarily. It has to do that you convey and have done your homework to build all the details. You could call it actually a strategy plan for your business. One of the places you start is you have a clear understanding of your value proposition. What's the need or problem that your business solves? That's one of the key elements of your value proposition. What do you do that's unique? How do you set yourself apart? Whether you're in a sign-making business, a donut shop, muffler shop, you bake cupcakes, whatever it is, what sets you apart, makes you different from everybody else? How are you going to differentiate yourself from the competition? Basically, you're answering the question, why are customers going to buy from you? That's what your value proposition is all about. I'm going to share with you a little story of an individual by the name of Dave Walcott. Dave Walcott is a friend of mine. I came to know him through Willow Creek Community Church. Dave's an unusual individual, very, very talented individual, born in Barbados. Great salesman, too. At the age of 8 years old, he convinced his parents to move to Montreal, Canada, so that he could learn to play hockey because it became a passion of his. He and his parents moved to Montreal. He became proficient in hockey, got to the point where he was very, very successful as a coach in the world of hockey. Now, as is obvious, he's a black man. There aren't that many black players in the world of hockey. Barbados, there's almost nobody plays hockey in Barbados because hockey is not the sport of Barbados, but it is the sport of Canada. Dave's an interesting guy because he has 3 sons together with his former wife. And one of his sons, Danny, became extremely proficient because of Dave's coaching in hockey, got drafted by a professional hockey team called the New York Rangers. And as a part of that drafting exercise, he was exposed to much higher intensity workouts than he might have been accustomed to, had problems with hydration. Sportaid, Gatorade, other sport drinks weren't getting the job done. Dave did some research, came up with a product that ultimately became identified as Prodrate, but it was built upon coconut water. He had Danny on a program of using coconut water, which seemed to do a great job of helping him with his hydration and cramping problems. So Dave came up with this idea wholly on his own, created a drink with a name that really kind of implied where the target market was, which was Prodrate. He was targeted towards sports drinks, professional, semi-professional athletes. In 2014, he came up with the idea. In late summer of 2014, actually launched the product in March of 2015 with a case run of about 40,000 cases of Prodrate, because out of this unique need that he had personally with his son Danny, the idea came to him to be able to turn this into a business, which he has been able to successfully do today. And it is a product that competes against Sportaid, Gatorade, other types of sporting drinks back in the mid-2010 era, that there were not that many drinks based upon coconut water. So he was able to create a product. He got it patented, he got it trademarked and registered and all those things that he had to do. And then he was off in the marketplace with it. Had some success here in the US. His co-packer was down in Tampa, Florida. Danny got traded to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And so Dave moved down to Tampa with his son, Danny, and began to try to move the product forward, if you will, as a company. A life situation came up. His father became in need of care services. He had to go back to Montreal, put his idea kind of on hold, wasn't able to devote the amount of time and energy to it. While in Canada, he and his sons auditioned for a program called Dragon's Den, which is the equivalent of Shark Tank in Canada. And this was in, if I'm remembering correctly, probably mid-year of 2018. And the Dragon's Den show was being recorded in mid-year 2018 for airing in November of 2018. So he couldn't tell anybody what happened. But the format was the same as Shark Tank. Investors make a decision on the spot after a short pitch on an idea or concept, and then they move it forward or they send a person packing. In this case, Dave couldn't tell us anything. November, the show aired. He was able to let us all know that he got 6 figures of funding to take his business forward, and the support of 2 dragons or 2 investors to help him move the concept forward in Canada once again. He is off and running, building his company as a successful CEO of a brand new concept that was created out of a life need. Clearly understanding that the value proposition is this is something that semi-pro or pro or any athlete, even at the high school or the youth level, can really benefit from. Here's the really good news. Proud dad moment, as I call it. Danny was playing for the Tampa Bay Lightning when they won the Stanley Cup. And so as a result of that his son Danny was able to have pictures taken in uniform with the Stanley Cup in his hands, and it's a great picture of he and his dad standing next to the Stanley Cup. And it's simply a way to go, Danny, a proud dad moment. So let's talk a little bit about your marketing strategy. Really, it's as simple as this. Who are your prospects, and how are they going to find you? Are you going to be searching them out, or are they going to be looking for you? And there's 2 different strategies associated with that. What are the tools that you're going to use? Are you going to use advertising? Where? When? Are you going to use referrals? Maybe you have power partners. You might ask the question, well, what's a power partner? Well, that's somebody that has a third-party influence that brings business your way. Someone that's going to be a referral agent for you in some way. Maybe you're going to use e-commerce or social media in some way. Whatever means you're going to use, it all has to be defined as a part of your marketing strategy. And we're going to talk about that in the building of your marketing plan, but essentially everything having to do with your strategy says, who is my market? How am I going to attack it? How am I going to get customers or clients? How are you going to measure success? Just simply having a good product or service does not guarantee that you're going to have a successful business. So don't delude yourself into thinking that. So let's talk a little bit about the numbers. What happens whenever you start talk numbers? Are you the deer in the headlights? Or are you the one that just eats it up because numbers are your thing? Spreadsheets are your love. Not everybody fits into that category. Maybe some people fit into the category of I glaze over when you start talking about numbers and P&L. It's like I barely can able to manage my checkbook. No criticism of that. Everybody is gifted differently. It simply means that if you don't have a good understanding of the numbers side of your business, make sure you have an advisor alongside of you that can give you coaching, give you counseling, and help you to manage the numbers side of your business. So really, it kind of boils down to this in a very simple form. What's it going to cost to start and run your business? Today, lower left-hand corner under category A, upper right-hand corner, profitable business. What goes in between? Well, there's the activities that get you started. Your industry research, gathering demographic and psychographic information. I'll explain that in a little bit more detail next week. Building that marketing plan, which again, we're going to be diving into next week in detail. Product development, facilities, all these things that go into the creation of your business. That is before you actually open the doors and get revenue starting to flow. And then once you actually open the doors, what goes into getting you to the break-even point, which is the point at which your revenue and your expenses are equal? What are those revenue forecasts? What are the components that go into your expenses that you're going to have on a regular basis, both variable and non-variable? And so are direct or indirect expenses. So anyway, you need to articulate what all those things are. And it kind of comes out in this form because all you're trying to do is to manage risk. How are you going to get from point A to point B with the least amount of risk and the least amount of challenge? The report you see before you here is something called a cash flow analysis, and it's actually part of a financial pro forma, a workbook, if you will. Across the top, you see months. You could put in, start at whatever month you want to, but you have a beginning back cash balance, which essentially is whatever you have in your checkbook. What are your cash receipts going to come from through that month? And this is where your sales forecasts come into play. You got to make your projections and say, this is what we think we're going to do from a sales standpoint. And then what are the disbursements? What do you spend money on? That leads you to a place where you simply look at what's the net cash flow for the business. Is my revenue equaling my expenses? Are my expenses exceeding my revenue? Typically in the beginning, it's going to be your expenses are going to be exceeding your revenue. And that's what's going to build to the point where you have to be able to generate enough revenue that will cover off your expenses to get to that place called break even. So you're no longer eating into your cash flow or you're eating into your working capital. And then beyond that, hopefully, is where you begin to make profitability in the business and you get to a point where you're able to take some income out of the business for yourself. This is a vitally important report. Typically, you'll do a projection like this for 3-year cash flow projection. It's what a banker wants to look at. This is one of the first reports that they will look at when they're going to say, explain to me why you believe that these numbers are credible, because that's what they're going to be taking a risk on, is whether or not they want to lend you money based upon what your forecasts are. Because a bank they have a lot of money. They're very willing to lend money, but they want to make sure they get it back with interest. And that's really what the strategy is all about. There are a couple of tools that I have available that I'm more than happy to share with individuals. And towards the end of this presentation, I will give you a way to get in touch with me. It's a very, very simple business plan. And this is a set of instructions for completing the business plan. This is a very, very simple format for a business plan. And then there's a pro forma, an Excel workbook that includes sections on sales forecast, cost of goods sold, all these other items that are listed here that typically will go into the creation of a pro forma for your business plan. This is extremely important to, again, have a format that you're going to be using. There are other lots and lots of resources that are available via the internet. You can simply plug in the words business plan under Google, and you will find a ton of resources that you can potentially also tap into. The hardest part about putting a business plan together is being motivated to do it, because it's a lot of work. But the value of it is that you're able to determine whether or not you truly do have a successful strategy behind a business that can generate the kind of results that you're looking for, meet your expectations. I want you to do it intentionally. You can make stuff up on the fly. It's not the most efficient way to do it. It's not the most risk averse way to do it. You want to make sure you have a good business plan that's going to allow you to have a good sense of what the business is going to accomplish for you. And again, if you have to sell it to a banker, it gives you that information that's going to convince them. This simple illustration of a bear chasing somebody down on the road on the bicycle, it's like, hey, maybe you are the one on the bicycle and you got to have a bear chasing you to get you motivated to do it. You'll find it will be time well spent. So plans bring dreams to life. It's important to have a dream, just to have a plan, so it's not just a wish. You'll find, if you got to know me a little bit better, you'd find that I'm one who loves signage like this, motivational statements, if you will. A goal without a plan is just a wish. You could also say that a dream without a plan is a pipe dream, because if you don't have a plan for how you're going to actually make things happen, then all you've got is a dream and you have no substance behind it. The greatest amount of wasted time is the time not getting started. So why don't you get going today? Life has no remote. Get up and change it yourself. What's holding you back? I can't answer that question. You have to answer that question. But again, I hope that this is helpful to you and giving you some understanding of that. This whole series, again, is designed around these elements, which I pointed out to you in the prior workshop. The dreaming stage, we covered that off in part 1. Part 2, we're talking about the business plan tonight. We're talking about financial model. We're talking about marketing strategy. Next session, we will cover off the marketing plan in detail. That's the whole planning stage. And then you get to the execute stage, which is what are your financing options? How are you going to fund the business? How are you going to set up the business from a legal standpoint? Are there compliance issues? How are you going to name the business, et cetera, et cetera? That's going to be summarized from an execution standpoint into 12 steps. It'll simply say, if you want to start a business in Illinois, you got to do these 12 steps in order to get there. So we'll cover that off in some detail in part 4 of this series. So again, this is what this series is all about. It's to get you thinking. You probably got unanswered questions. If you do, feel free to text me or email me. If you'd like a copy of this presentation or the business plan tools, feel free to reach out to me and I will be more than happy to provide it to you. My contact numbers, phone numbers are down there on the lower left corner, or my email address, mwaller@mwaller&associates.com. You can reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to do that for you. So again, part 3, which will be the next session in this series, will be about creating that marketing plan. I hope that you'll be able to join us for that session. And hopefully you'll find that it's not all that difficult, it just takes a little bit of work on your part. So for this time, that's all, folks. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye now.